so many people now that say that whole leave the 9 to 5. It isn't for everybody. It is not for everybody. Not everybody is wired to run their own thing, start their own thing, and that is totally fine. It is so okay if it isn't for you.
So yeah, hi Caroline, thank you very much for coming on to the show today, and I just want you to give us a quick introduction to yourself. So you're Caroline and you run Craft Coaching.
I do. So my name's Caroline Canty. I'm the founder and director of Craft Coaching. I'm also a co-founder of another startup as well. Okay. Loads going on. But yeah, I basically am a growth specialist. So I help tech and digital businesses to grow, to scale, whether that's scale to exit or just scale because they want a wider market reach, whatever it happens to be. And my delivery is through being a coach and consultant because you need a little bit of both. Yeah. Because a lot of growth is around, sure, the tactics, the strategies, all that, but also growth means change, and change to most people means a threat. The mindset blockers and things like that, they need to be worked through if you want growth that feels right and you want change that's actually going to stick. Okay. So, yeah.
So I'm going to take you all the way back to the start of your career. How does one become a growth specialist? Literally, I noticed that you started off with a PR degree.
Journalism. Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to go all the way back
all the way back, yeah.
Do you know what it is? I have always said the exact same thing when everyone talks about career and things like that, and how do you fall into it and all that kind of stuff. And I have always followed what I have enjoyed and what I have genuinely had like a gut instinct feel about. And at the time, because when I was in high school and all that kind of thing, I just love writing. That's what I enjoyed content, and so the natural kind of next step to that was journalism, and was a different style of writing, because when you're in high school it's all academic and things like that. Yeah. So I wanted to try something that was a little bit more, not I suppose not ruthless, but something that's just a little bit more cutting, a little bit more concise, something like that.
Yeah, you do actually. Like, I think one of the first things that I had in my first marketing job was and we've had this conversation myself and people that work for me, you feel like you're writing an essay still, and it's you have to really train yourself to not think like that. I have an English degree, so very wordy, but in business, you just have to get to the point.
Yeah, that's such a big issue as well, I think, for a lot of business owners, is that your entire brain is wired from a young age towards doing the total opposite of what you actually do in the workplace. Because you're told, make it 800 words, make it 2,000 words, and then you get in, it's I want it in 3 bullet points or less. So everything about that, I think that's why it's particularly different if you then become a business owner, because you have to go from, you have to completely flip the way that you think. And I think that being a journalist, that kind of started me off on that path, because that's very much about getting to the point. Yeah. It's also about asking questions, challenging things, getting to the root cause of things, which is then weirdly what I ended up doing as a coach. It's the same sort of skill set. It just developed in a completely different direction.
That's a really good way of looking at it, actually, in terms of I suppose you are instead of getting to the heart of a story, you're getting to the heart of why does this person want this? Yeah. Do they actually want it? Is it something where it's do you just say you want it because everyone's saying they want it?
Yeah. That's actually a massive thing, is that a lot of people, business owners especially, struggle when it comes to success and growth and all of these things, because I think they naturally look to places like LinkedIn or social media and what other people are doing, and kind of they're not quite sure where they're headed, so they emulate what works for other people. Yeah. But then it never quite feels right. And there's a big learning, I think, for a lot of business owners, where you have to realize that success looks different at different points of a business. The first couple of years looks totally different from 5, looks totally different to 10, and that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. So success looks different, but also it can look different even just in terms month to month. And if sometimes growth is not about headcount going up, it's not about revenue going up. Sometimes it's just improving profitability and everything kind of stays the same and you're improving a different area, that's still growth, that's still an improvement in performance. It's just a different way of looking at it.
Definitely, yeah. I think like it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think if you've worked in marketing as well, you've had some really good prominent marketing roles, and I think like when you actually start looking at, I guess, like the intricacies of a marketing strategy, how you actually manage performance, like it's not always revenue, especially if you're at a different stage of like a product's just been launched. Well, you might need to educate people around what this product actually is. Like expecting £1 million in sales straight away like might not work.
Yeah.
So there's all of that pieces around like, okay, what actually is the plan here? Like, what's the long game? How are we going to manage and measure success? And what are we at this stage in terms of like wanting to do it? Like, obviously I'm 2 years into, 18 months into running this business now, and I've said like, if we do well, that's great, but these first 3 to 5 years I'm just seeing it as an experiment. Like, I want to collect data. Who do we like working with? What's profitable for us? Like, what sort of roles do we actually need? And also marketing changes so much as well, and I suppose you'll have this even more so with like digital and tech. Changes every day. Some new update can come out and completely wipe a business out.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So it is, you're just working with so many unknowns. So it is like a period of discovery.
Yeah, that's a really healthy way to look at it, because I think, I'm in my 5th year, coming into my 5th year, and that is basically what I did. Was I've taken these first years to really experiment and get to know like what makes craft tick. What do I love doing? What do I not? And that evolution is really important in the first few years of a business. You need to be okay with failing. Yeah. You need to be okay with making mistakes. You need to be okay with the fact that not everything's going to work perfectly. And probably the proposition that you have at like 6 months, 12 months, totally different again in 18, totally different again in 3. It's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be that kind of agile period of time.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing you mentioned there around, in marketing especially, there is so much management of expectation.
Yeah.
And one thing that I always say is like, this is why like salespeople can be on a commission basis, but marketing people can't, because they control the activity. They don't control the result in the same way. And when it is so subjective as well, everybody's got an opinion about what is great copy, what is great marketing, all of that side of things. You've got so many different expectations to manage. And you said like, you probably spotted me laugh when you said about the £1 million in your first year. I've genuinely come across that before. And is it possible? Yeah, but it's only possible if you right from day one have a really ruthless strategy of this is exactly what we're going to execute, when we're going to execute it, and you've already got an element of data backing you up as to guide you in the right direction. So it's not that it's not possible, it's just that it's a really clear sign of maybe a super ambitious founder that's like, I want to really grow, I want to really smash it. And it's like, that's great, but we need to add a dose of realism to that.
Yeah, I think like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like I'd love to hit 1 million in my business, but like I've literally said to the team, like if it takes us 10 years, it takes us 10 years. I saw a really cool stat actually the other day that apparently in terms of just like female owned businesses, only 18% reach 6 figures and only 2% reach 7 figures.
That's really interesting.
It is really interesting. So I was like, oh, well, luckily we did the 6 figures in our first year. And I was like, well, even if it takes us 10 years to get to the other 7, like, it takes us 10 years, but I still want to be part of the 2%.
Yeah, yeah. And as long as you have that vision, that's the main thing. I mean, you said before about the amount of uncertainty that there is as a business owner. Yes, especially in tech, but I think it's everybody all the time, especially now over the last couple of years.
Yes.
And the one thing that I always say to business owners is, look, you're the owner, you're the founder, therefore, by default, you will never have certainty.
Yeah.
And that really shakes us internally. It causes a lot of issues with the kind of mental resilience side of things, because that speaks to a very primitive part of our brain, which is rooted in things like certainty and control. And as a founder, we don't have either in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I also think as well, like I've got a friend at the moment who's just been made redundant from a marketing role. And it's also like, I actually see what I do as a safer element, because like
100%.
obviously I'd just go out and win another client.
Yeah.
Whereas like there's not actually a plethora of marketing jobs out there at the moment.
Yeah.
Good ones like anyway, because obviously with everything that's going on in the country, marketing is always one of the first budgets to be cut.
Yeah, which has never made any sense to me.
Doesn't
we're not getting clients in, so we're going to cut the sales and marketing budget. Well, that makes sense. Never understand that.
So to me, I was kind of like, actually, like my worst case scenario is I just go and get another job, and like that's what 99% of people are doing anyway. So like I kind of see what I'm doing as a yeah, it was scary, but I actually think I have more certainty.
Yeah.
And if not, I'd probably end up going and getting a job that pays me more than the actual business pays me.
Yeah. You know, it's so funny you say that, because when I first started, that's what a lot of people said to me in the beginning. Oh, well, you know, you can always go and get a job, I suppose. Or, you know, what's your plan B? And I always said, there's no plan B. Like, this is it. If I need a plan B, plan A isn't good enough.
Yeah.
And I saw that as everybody, let's take the two sides, employed versus self-employed or starting a business, both come with risks.
Yeah.
Both come with pros and cons. But you choose the risk you go after. The risk of staying employed is that you'll always be capped with salary. Your livelihood, the roof over your head, is completely controlled by another person.
Yeah.
I choose the other risk of, well, there might be some months where you don't win clients. There might, that kind of risk. Risk is a choice, and all of us deal with various risks and choose various risks. And I am completely on the same page as you. I prefer the certainty of my area, and I suppose choose the uncertainty of my area over the uncertainty of the other. And I think that's what drives a lot of business owners.
Yeah, I also think as well, like, I probably have got one of those personalities where it's like, to me, I just don't understand how someone can turn around to me and say, like, you are worth X amount of money to me. Whereas I'm like, I'd even rather take less, but still like have the capacity to like prove myself in a marketplace.
Yeah.
And then it's not tied to like someone being like, but you're only worth like 40k.
Yeah.
Like that really winds me up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's bound to. And I think that, again, that's another kind of driver, isn't it? I mean, when you first started, was there anything that was like a real shock when you became a business owner and was really different from what you thought? Especially around the value piece.
That's a really hard one to answer. I think it's because I've always had kind of like sales or commission based roles.
Yeah.
I've always kind of had an element of like performance based pay.
Yeah.
And I was also very lucky that when I set this business up, it was the third time I was setting it up, but the other two times I just happened to do it for other businesses. So it was almost like a tried and tested method. The only thing I couldn't do was like, I suppose, really like nail my network for 6 months and tap into that. So yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. What I actually struggled with the most in terms of getting my head around stuff was, I'm your classic salesperson. I will go out and make money, but when it comes to managing it, like, I tripped and fell into Hermes earlier.
We've all been there.
So yeah, that was my thing. So I was like, what? The first thing I did was go and get an accountant.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's like the first thing I outsourced. Like even before this, because I had a spell before as a sole trader and a freelancer when I was making that transition from the kind of journalism media world into more content and marketing and that side. I set up as a freelancer and took clients for copywriting, proof editing, all that kind of stuff. Again, first thing I did, accountant. Like, that is not my world. And I'm totally happy with that. Like, this is why, we talked about this just before, like, this is why you employ other people to do the stuff you know you are not good at. Like, it is better off with another person that's far more qualified than me.
You know, when you worked in freelance, and so obviously you've had like kind of freelance employed, and now you actually own a business.
Yeah.
It's really strange. I've never been freelance. I've been employed, and then I set Big Reputation up as a business from the off, and I've always ran it as a business.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people, when they say like when they were freelance, they found it really hard to get out of the mindset of being a freelancer to running a business.
Yes. Yeah. That's probably the best way to put it. Like, I think it's that when you become a freelancer, you are still typically trading time and money.
Yeah.
there's not a value exchange there. And I think that whether you become a freelancer or whether you become a business owner for the first time, one thing that I see a lot is that people will take an employee mindset with them. So freelancers, great example, because usually their first goal is to earn the salary that they got in their last job.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a first goal for them. And while that sounds great and sounds nice, because it sounds like it's on your terms, you're still an employee. It's just to yourself. And it can be really difficult for people to break that cycle, because in order to kind of elevate from being a freelancer to a business owner mindset is more about I want to work less and earn more. And the very point of kind of a freelancer is you get jobs, it's an hourly rate or a day rate or whatever, and it kind of traps the two together, so that it becomes really difficult to I suppose prize yourself away from that previous mindset. So exactly the same as we talked about before, a huge part of growth is change.
Yeah.
And that change on a mindset level is what will actually stick. And if you want to move away from being a freelancer into a business owner, you've got to embrace that idea of, okay, I'm going to work less and it's going to feel weird. I'm going to go for value proposition rather than time, and it's going to feel weird. There's lots of things that will be firsts, but you have to push yourself to do it and be okay with it feeling really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I get that. I think, like, looking back, I suppose I never really done anything kind of like freelancing, and like even when I was employed, I was fully employed because I've worked mostly in agencies.
Yeah.
And I never was able to do freelance work outside because you've got restrictive covenants. You can't do that. And then obviously when I set this business up, like, because I was always more so like an account manager / marketing manager, I'm used to managing other people.
Yeah.
I actually really struggled the first 6 months of this business because I was like, what do you mean? Like, I can't just go and win work. Like, I have to think about what I can actually deliver.
Yeah.
And that was my thing. And I also think, in a weird way, I'm probably the laziest workaholic you will ever meet. Like, I will happily go out and win work and bring in work and make sure everything is delivered on time. But tell me to sit there and schedule social posts, I just don't want to do it.
No, because your mind is on other things.
Yeah.
And that's like, you probably heard these sorts of phrases before, but that's a £10 task and you want to work on the 10 grand tasks.
Yeah.
It's that you have such big ideas and bigger things that you'd rather be working on, that you almost, in the nicest possible way, resent having to do those little tasks, because you're like, I'm past this now, I didn't want to do this, but you do have to push through that, and you have to, in the beginning, accept that there are things about being a founder that you're not going to like, and over time you can slowly outsource them and get them away from you, but it takes real grit and persistence through that to be able to get to the other side. It sounds like that is something you've done.
Yeah, no, we did it relatively quickly, to be fair. But then again, like, from a salary perspective, like, because I was used to performance-based pay, I've always been used to really low basics.
Yeah.
And I've managed, I say I'm not very good with money. I'm great with money, to be honest. Like, I've managed to really sort myself out. I'm only 28 and like set a nice kind of foundation for it. So I actually probably don't pay myself the same amount that a lot of business owners would, but it's enabled us to grow a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And again, it comes down to, I guess, like what you actually value as a person and where you want to go. Like, I look at Big Reputation and I see us as a team of 20-25 working on incredible work, not like me driving around in an Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather have a team of people around me, like, doing stuff every day that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to, again, knowing yourself and that sort of thing. But I guess, like, as someone who's been through then all of those, I guess, nuances of work, from being a founder to and a co-founder to I guess back in the day when you just did freelance and was also employed, what has been the most challenging scenario, I think, of like how what you've come across in your work? Like, which one was the one that you didn't enjoy the most?
Oh, 100% I didn't enjoy freelancing anywhere near what I do now. Like, I get up now and every single day I just love what I do. And I love the fact that I get to love what I do every single day, and that I get to help people on a level that is not just either being in a role, and you can manage. When you're a manager and a leader, you can only help people so much.
Yeah.
And even when I think the other thing is that when I was a freelancer, I was a freelance writer, and although I was good at it, I don't have anywhere near the love and the passion and the kind of the motivation that comes from doing something that I'm like, I love this.
Yeah.
And helping people to grow, teams to grow, businesses to grow, I get so much more fulfillment out of. So even just purely based off of, like you said, like what you value, what makes you want to get up and do it again, like it has to be as a business owner. Even though if you were to look at the two, it would look on paper as though the business owner's way harder, and it is. Because rather than a freelancer where you're exchanging time for money, I found it pretty straightforward to get contracts and things like that. It's a whole different ball game when you're a business owner, but it is so much more fulfilling.
Yes, 100%. I think like even now, I suppose I've never done freelance as such, but like when it's just yourself or maybe you and one other person, like if someone wants to negotiate your fees, you might take it if you want the money in. Whereas like now I'm kind of like, actually no, like I've got more people that I need to look after.
Yeah.
These are our rates. Like, and I'm also not taking lower because it's not fair on the clients that are paying those rates. Like, so you just lose the business. Like I'm happy to walk away from that.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you have to hold your standards in that capacity.
Oh, you absolutely do. You have to be able to hold your ground and know what you are worth, and know that what you're charging is very fair, and also know that won't be for everybody.
Yeah.
You have to accept that, there's a lot of people that won't want to work with you, but there'll also be a lot that do.
Yeah, or they will want to work with you, but they won't want to pay you what you're actually worth.
And that's fine. You go to somebody that's 50 quid an hour. That is not a problem. I'm exactly the same, because I think if you're good at value propositions and that kind of thing, and you understand that switch between, again, being a freelancer into being a business owner, and then growing it from there, you understand how to position based on the value that somebody will get from working with you, the outcomes that they're going to achieve, all of that stuff that we do in marketing. But it's so important that you always come back to, what am I worth? Does this person value me? Is this client going to be somebody that I love working with?
Yeah.
It's all of those things. It's having that client criteria list, if you like, because when people worry about letting go of a potential client, it's that certainty thing again. It's that, but is this the right decision? Am I making a big mistake? And the only way that you can ever cheat code certainty is with clarity.
Yeah.
And you have to be clear on, well, what does a good client look like versus a bad one? Have they given me any indication that they could be a red flag client that would be really difficult to cope with?
Vibes are off, yeah.
Usually the ones that question your prices, that is a strong indication that they don't truly get your value. Now, that can either be because you haven't done the value proposition enough and really tapped into what their problem is, sure. But 9 times out of 10, it's usually that they were never going to work with you because that was never their budget. That was never what they valued marketing, for example, to be at, or whatever it happens to be. And you have to have that little checklist in your head of, what do I need to feel certain on in order to make a decision on this?
Yeah, we had one actually, to be fair. Like, I went through an exercise just before Christmas where we put all of our prices up on a flat level, because we had, when I did to start the business, we had some that were paying like slightly different rates. I was like, no, okay, we're going to flatten all of these out. And we lost a client over it, but like, I wasn't really fussed.
Yeah.
It's like, at the end of the day, like, if other people are happy to pay this and they're genuinely happy with that fee, like, we want to work with people that also are happy with that.
Yeah.
We've also got like this thing I say to the team all the time, like, if I look at my phone and I think, oh, I can't be bothered to answer that, we shouldn't work with them as a client.
Instant red flag.
Yeah.
Instant red flag.
Yeah.
But you have that awareness. A lot of people don't. It takes time to develop that awareness into being something that you can kind of confidently push back on and say, hang on a minute, this isn't right. This doesn't feel right.
No, I get that. I think like it's, I guess in terms of then turning this around onto a question in terms of like coaching, what are some of the biggest things that people really struggle with when they're through certain periods of growth? So like, if we take it from kind of small business, low sort of like six figures, and they want to get to mid six figures. Are those the sorts of clients you work with, or are they like different stages?
Yeah, it's, to be perfectly honest, the stage that I can work with somebody right from being a founder with a small team.
Okay.
So maybe not like startup as in like just started,
Yeah.
but maybe they've been doing it for a couple of years, through to sort of mid-sized agency. Okay. Because those are the growing pains that I have been there with, have seen, have supported people through. To be honest, there are different stages within a business where certain pains hurt more than others.
Yeah.
So the one that you're talking about in terms of like a revenue goal, it's usually because businesses will get to a point where they've got where they are because they have a good network that they've made the most of, and they've predominantly come through referrals,
yeah,
or potentially partners, and they've really rinsed their network, which is great, but that only takes you so far, and that you inevitably hit a revenue cap with your own network and what you're able to produce. And it's usually at that stage that a pain of like, but I want to get bigger than this and I just don't know how. And it is a knowledge gap, but there's also usually things going on in the team as well in terms of maybe new processes that you want to bring in, but people don't adopt them. A big thing is that maybe a founder or the board of directors, if it's a larger company, or the C-suite, will do this they'll do like a day or a town hall or a company meeting where they want to inspire the team to change, and they want to motivate them to change, and they get up and they say, we're going to do this and this is where we're going and it's going to be amazing, and everybody's all up here and energized, and then they leave the room and it all goes back to normal again. And you're like, but why? Like, I gave that big motivational speech. Like, that was a TED talk that I gave. and it's just not worked. The biggest issue that I see when it comes to growth is that founders will, or business, the more senior people, if it is a large team, they think that motivating people with reward is enough. And it isn't, full stop. People need an amplified pain in order to move, because the way that we are wired is to move based on threat, not reward.
That's
interesting. So, and people say, well, why is that? It doesn't make any sense. And this is down to personal development and things like that. Even if, we've all been there where we've started the year off and we've wanted something for ourselves, and then it quickly dwindles by like the end of January. And it's because the pain isn't there strong enough. Because if you imagine going back to primitive times, that there is maybe an apple tree in front of you and a poisonous snake underneath it, or a sleeping bear or something like that. There's a threat there. If we were reward based, we'd be like, oh, it'll probably be fine. I really want that apple.
Yeah.
But because we are threat based, we go, I mean, I want the apple, but this isn't worth it. I'm going to go and find another tree. It has enabled us to get to this point by being threat-based in the way that we think, in the way that we are default, I suppose, wired.
Okay.
Now, we get into the workplace, we don't have threats like that anymore, and it's completely useless, this mechanism. And it's like, but I really want that promotion. I really want that, whatever it happens to be, that next level of revenue. Why isn't that enough? And it's because the pain of where you are isn't enough. So if you really want to grow and you really want to motivate your team, they need two things. They need the shiny reward, but they need how it matters to them.
Yeah.
And they need an amplified risk of staying the same. They need to know why we can't afford to stay the same. Because and they also need to know why it's relevant to them and their position. Because what we're doing is tapping into the primitive mechanism within us that essentially wants to stay the same on all counts.
Yeah.
Because if we're the same, then we're alive. And that's all its job is to keep you alive. And an unknown that's really nice is still an unknown to this machine. It's still a threat that it worries about it. And rather than go towards it, it thinks, no, it could have negative. I'm just going to stay here. Because if we're here, we're alive. So the biggest thing I say is where people want to grow and want to change, but they don't have an amplified risk in order to bring the team with them. And they think that a reward is enough. Beyond that, it usually comes down to a knowledge gap in terms of the strategy piece. how to actually get where you want, and an understanding that success for me and my business might look different to that agency or that company or that product business, and that is okay, and the acceptance of that.
I think actually one of the best pieces of advice I was given when I first, I guess, set this business up was, is this a lifestyle business or are you running this as a business?
Yeah.
And like, to me, I was like very much like, no, it is a business, and I do treat it as such. Like, we have client contact hours, like we work, like I try and take some element of the weekends off, the team get the weekends off, but like I'm not one of those people that will just ditch and go out for brunch with my mates at 2:00 on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Like, we run it as a business.
Yeah.
And I think just one person saying that to me when I set this business up really shifted my focus onto, no, this is a business.
Yeah. And it's good that you had that kind of support, because so many people, when they start off as well, if they don't have a network, if they don't have a community around them, like, where do you go for that kind of advice? Where do you go to meet them? I mean, you said about, you know, when you first started, various challenges. Was that one of them for you, or did you already bring from sales roles a little bit of a network already?
I had a bit of a network, and I suppose like in my area, and I was like kind of known for doing what I do. I'd had I've got a good platform on LinkedIn. I guess mine were probably like self-limiting beliefs, in the sense of like, grew up in a council house, like I was naughty at school, I was always told that I'd never get anywhere in life. People, like my mum and dad were employed, like no one I knew or like I guess were friends with ran a business. So it was that sort of like, I just don't know what I don't know attitude.
Yeah.
But then also as well, I'm probably the most defiant person you'll ever meet, and if you tell me I can't do something, I'm like, I'll do it twice and take pictures.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those where it was like, I have a massive chip on my shoulder because of all of that, and then have something to prove.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't say that I that was one of my challenges. Like, if anything, it was probably a blessing in disguise. But yeah, I think in terms of like network and stuff, one thing that I have noticed is a lot of the people in my network knew me when I first started this business, and now know it, and we were a team of 3, and we are continuously growing, like, touch wood, thank God. And we've surpassed where they have taken like 5 years to get to in the space of like 12 months. And that, there's an underlying sense of like quite negative vibes that you get from people when that happens.
Yeah. It's, well, I mean, why do you think that is? Where do you think that comes from?
In terms of that, I suppose it's like you've shown that it's possible. It's like you know, like the crabs in the bucket analogy.
Oh yeah,
and like drag you back down.
So true.
It's
so true.
And I think sometimes like it's one of the things that I've struggled with. Is like I look like I'm someone who's really, really tough, but actually like I'm quite like I'm really nice actually, and I don't like upsetting people or like that sort of thing. But at the same time, I have like such high standards that I hold myself to, and I try and set that standard so it inspires the team around me.
Yeah.
And I don't carry dead weight. I am very much like, we don't do that.
Yeah.
And I just won't. Like, it's like I set the standard and we hold that standard.
Yeah. The standards thing is super important as you grow, because usually where there is a conflict with people, maybe somebody rubs you up the wrong way, or maybe their behaviour, like just in the back of your mind, you're like, well, I wouldn't do that. And, you know, whatever. I see that a lot with founders as well, because usually they're the founder because they're exceptional about what they do.
Yeah. And
they have incredibly high standards. And it's very difficult for them to let go and hand over things to people that might not be as good as them.
Yeah.
And might not deliver the results that I would deliver. And that's really hard for people. But the thing to bear in mind is that when there is a conflict like that, it always comes back to the standards, the values, the expectations that you hold, always. And you have to also accept that you might be wrong. The best way to look at this is if you look at it as though you have a contract with the world. Mm-hmm. The minute that you wake up in the morning, open your eyes, get sorted for the day, you have signed up to a contract with the world for your standards, your values, what you expect of people around you and of yourself.
Yeah.
And the minute that something is called into question, it sets off something in us. That's why we get angry. That's why we get frustrated if it's like, well, but that is the easiest thing. Why can't you just Google it? Why are you asking me? Like, I would Google it. I would do this. Like, I see this all the time.
Yeah.
And it's that moment for us to step back and say, okay, is this an actual issue, or is this in me, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay, is this a clash of values? Because where your standards aren't being met, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're right and they're wrong. Yeah. It just means that they have a different contract with the world, and in their world, that language that they used on that call, or the way that they responded to a client, or whatever it is, that's acceptable in their world. So then you have two choices. Number one, if it's a personal thing and it's not about damaging the business, it's just a personal thing, you can choose to lower your standards to meet that person where they are and accept that that's who they are. But if it is something that is about the standards in a business, the things that can genuinely, maybe anger a client or something like that, then that's more about, I need to work with them to bring their standards up to mine.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm right and they're wrong or anything like that. It's about, they've signed up to a different contract and I need to get us on the same page.
Yeah.
So it's that thing about expectations and standards, whether it is work or whether it is with people, and their behavior is so important to have as a business owner.
I think it's true as well. And I also think as well, like, when it's your business, it's even kind of like, can I be bothered to put up with coaching this person?
Like, is it worth it?
Yeah. And that is a big question that you find yourself asking sometimes. It's like, what is the actual gain of doing this? Is it just easier to, especially with suppliers and stuff, it's like, you might as well just go out and find one that can actually meet you where you're at. Yeah. Instead of like having this arduous process where it's like, it's not working for anyone. Like, let's call it a day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that you have to pick your battles.
Yeah.
And you have to be super efficient with your time. And you have to make sure that the battles that you do pick are for the right reasons as well. And when you bring in people to that, it becomes so much more complicated. And this is the real thing about, we're back to that idea of growth and the challenges that you experience when you grow in a business. The product probably stays the same. Yeah, the value proposition might change depending on market trends, all that sort of stuff. But all that stays the same. The tactics are the tactics. What complicates a business as it grows, it's always the people.
Yeah.
More people, more personalities to manage, more levels of workplace politics, all of that stuff. That's what complicates a business.
What are like the top 3 traits of the most successful founders that you see?
Such a difficult one.
I suppose it's different for each person as well, and how I guess those like traits maybe manifest into the real world. But like, you obviously meet a lot, and one of the reasons we set this podcast up was because a lot of young people, like I said, I'm 28, like I'm part of the generation where it's like all we see on Instagram is like, don't work a 9 to 5, be your own boss, work from the beach.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And why I set this up was to say, actually, like, there's nothing wrong with being employed if you want to, or there's nothing wrong with starting a business. Just choose and commit. Like, if you like, choose your hard.
Yeah. So the first one, because purely because you said that about, there's so many people now that say that whole leave the 9 to 5. It isn't for everybody. It is not for everybody. Not everybody is wired to run their own thing, start their own thing. And that is totally fine. It is so okay if it isn't for you. And we're back to that idea again of like, success looks different to different people in different businesses, different times of their lives. But if I were to narrow it down to 3 traits, the first one would absolutely be an ability to consistently adapt, be open to mistakes, to failures, and the quicker that they are able to reframe it into an opportunity, the quicker they're able to pick themselves up, to move on. That flexibility, that adaptability is key. The second, and these are probably like top 3 as in they're all even. This isn't in order of like this one's less than the other. They're all super critical. Mental resilience, an unwavering mental resilience, because I actually, when I set up my second business, maybe we'll have to do a whole other podcast episode on that one. But when I set up my second business, I knew, because a huge part of it was a technical build. I'm the visionary, like I can do the ideas, the brand, all of that stuff, but the actual build and the technical side is not my skill set.
You're one of those where it's like,
yeah,
someone else with the details of this.
I can't do it, and I know what I'm not able to do. I knew I needed a co-founder that could cut through that, and I grilled him a lot, and I made sure that one of the areas that I grilled him on was around mental resilience, because he hadn't really been a kind of co-founder, business owner much before, and I know how hard this can get for doing it for 5 years. I know how brutal it can be when you have those bad periods, because they happen. They just do. It's inevitable in business that you will get absolute highs, you'll get growth, you'll get consistent, and then something will happen, because it just always does. And I was really clear with him, like, I need to know if the kind of mental resilience, the commitment there on your side is there, because there are going to be times when this gets really hard, when it gets really horrible. And I know that from the experiences that I've had, that I have it there to be able to push and keep pushing and just grit your teeth and get through it. So that's absolutely critical as a trait. And then the third one would be a comfortable level of discomfort. Like that kind of being able to sit in discomfort and question it, challenge it, lean into the pain is such an important skill, because when you feel those growing pains happen, your body is telling you what you need to do to get there. And what we often do is we run away from it. We run away from it because we're designed to run away from it. We are designed to run away from threats. And where I have seen the most successful founders is where they're able to stop from running away, turn back around, look it in the face, and walk towards it and deal with it. And if you have those 3 traits, you will be successful. You can't not be.
Yeah, I like that. It's a really good summary of it, actually.
It's all mindset focused from me.
It is, but I think like that is what makes or breaks it in anything, and it's just like having that. I think it's that unwavering self-belief. Like I joke with my friends and stuff. I say like I'm probably borderline delusional in the sense of some things that we do, in the sense of like, yeah, I can do that. The only thing that I've actually like last year I've never ran, like I can't even run 5K at the moment, and I signed up to do a marathon.
Nice. That's one way to do it.
And also this year I'm like, yeah, I'll book and do a high rocks. Like, but it's just one of those where it's like sometimes it really is mind over matter.
Yeah.
And you've got to have like, I think in terms of like confidence and self-respect, like your self-respect must be higher than your feelings, because otherwise like you'll never get anything in life. And I also think as well, like it's just keeping your word. Like if you say you're going to do something, like do it, but do it for yourself, like because no one else is going to know if you're actually waking up at 6 a.m. every morning. Like, but you know. And then you're lying to yourself, you'll lie to other people.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely believe that.
Yeah, no, it is a test of character. And that's what it really is. It exposes all the things about yourself that either, you know, aren't quite there, or flaws, or, you know, all those things about ourselves that we don't want to work on. It exposes them to a level that you've never experienced before when you start your own business. And again, it's that ability to stare them in the face and say, is this something that needs work? Am I prepared to do it? Am I prepared to commit to it? Because I've come across founders before that aren't prepared to change. And that's okay. You can kind of still push through that in the early stages. Where that will manifest further down the line is maybe when you are kind of small to medium size, you've got a team around you, but you've hired everybody that's the same as you, because you clash with so many personality types, and you've never really worked on being able to be a bit more like a chameleon. And so if you're kind of really rigid and you won't change, you'll probably hire people that are very similar to you. You'll probably have other clients that are very similar to you. And then how many opportunities are you missing out on?
Yeah.
Because you didn't stare it in the face.
Well, you're stuck in an echo chamber as well.
Yeah.
So in terms then of people reaching out to you if they need any help with coaching or growth pains, where's the best place to find you?
LinkedIn is probably the best. It's just like /Caroline Canty. But I also have a YouTube channel, which is at Coach by Caroline. Nice. And there's a whole batch of pilot episodes that I did last year on there. It's going to be kind of relaunched and reinvigorated this year with a much kind of stronger mindset focus. But there's loads of videos on there that are around kind of burnout and that kind of mental resilience piece, especially for senior leaders. So those are probably the best 2 places.
Awesome. And I will definitely take you up on the offer of a second podcast to talk about your second business.
Okay. Perfect. Let's get it booked in.
Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Loved it.